Born from the ashes of World War II, 70 years ago, the United Nations was established to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war and to ensure human rights and justice for all. It was also decided that a Secretary General would lead the organization and serve as the spokesperson for the interests of the world's people, especially the poor and vulnerable. Over the last 70 years, the UN has had 8 Secretaries General leading it. One man who served under 5 Secretaries General is John Isaac. John was a UN staff member for some 30 years. He was one of its leading photographers.
I started as a messenger when U Thant was the Secretary General, and I later became the chief of the photo unit.
John traveled often with the Secretaries General. His first traveling assignment was under Kurt Waldheim.
I got one of the early assignments to travel with him to Vietnam, so when he went to Southeast Asia.
John remembers Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar.
When Namibia got its independence and I was there, and Pérez de Cuellar specifically asked the security to go and find me so that he can introduce me to Nelson Mandela. So I'm very fond of him.
John also recalls working with Boutros Boutros-Ghali.
I felt that Boutros-Ghali kept sort of a distance. He was a scholar. I liked him in many ways. I think he was an intellectual man.
John holds a special place in his heart for Secretary General Kofi Annan.
He was the first Secretary General who became very popular, maybe because of his personality. Kofi Annan and I go back before he became the Secretary General, and we became really close friends. He would invite me to his office, and sometimes we'll have tea, we'll have a cup of coffee together. He was such a humble man, down to earth.
Working as a United Nations photographer took a toll.
I had already seen some horrible things in Sarajevo, and then I flew right into Rwanda. When I came back, after I filed my story, I had a nervous breakdown and I became this close to killing myself. So I'm not thrilled about talking about it. That was probably one of the most horrible experiences. It was like the last straw.
Therapy pulled John out of trauma, and today he has no regrets.
The happiest moment I had in my life probably was in Namibia when it got its independence. And I was there on midnight. The whole world was watching, and the South African flag came down at 12 o'clock midnight, and the Namibian flag went up.
By the time Ban Ki-moon became Secretary General, John had already retired. His successor, Mark Garton, covers the current Secretary General, often taking photos. But it's not what it seems, he says.
Working with Ban Ki-moon is, it's not as glamorous as everyone seems to think it may be. Ultimately, you're working 20 hours a day, getting 2 hours of sleep. We did a trip to Greenland to see the ice melt, and watching the Secretary General take off on a dog sled, and quite interesting and pretty funny.
Mark Garton has been working as a photographer for the UN since 2002.
It's just mind-boggling. The people, the power, the energy that this organization has accomplished and portrayed to the world in terms of humanitarian crisis, conflict. There's nothing else on the planet. It's a pretty amazing thing.
Ban Ki-moon's term ends on the 31st of December 2016. The question is, who will replace him as the next Secretary General and lead this organization into the future? Will it be a man or a woman? This report was produced by Callum Plunkett for the United Nations.